See, it always takes a little moment before we go live. So making sure that we are live before I start talking. Hello, everybody. It's Claudia Mühlenweg from the Natural Vision Institute. This is the Clear Vision Wednesday show where we go over all kinds of things to improve your eyesight naturally. And today I have a very special guest. I have on Dr. Doni Wilson, and she will talk about 4 surprising ways to improve your vision and naturally. And let me bring her on. Dr. Doni, welcome to the show. Sorry, let me just bring you on stage 1 second.
Okay.
Okay, there you are. Hi.
Hi there. Thanks for having me.
So you are a naturopathic doctor. You had a clinical practice for over 25 years. You specialize in stress management, and you've written a book, which we can see behind you, Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health. So stress is such a big deal for vision. So tell us a little bit about, before we get into this, how did you get into stress management and working on this field?
I grew up in the Pacific Northwest of the United States, so I was in nature a lot as a child. And I also had, my father was a pharmacist, so I was also always exposed to thinking about what we ate and what we put into our bodies, how that affects our health. And then it turns out that when I was in college, about that age, I started getting severe migraines. I was getting migraines that caused nausea and vomiting, and I was getting them at least twice a month, and it was really debilitating. And I didn't know what to do. I was seeing different practitioners, and this was even during the time that I decided to become a naturopathic doctor. Even once I finished my residency and was in practice and had my daughter, I was still getting these migraines, and I thought to myself, like, what's going on? I'm a naturopathic doctor. I should be able to solve this. And in fact, for a long time, I felt almost like an imposter, because I felt like, how can I be a naturopathic doctor and still not be able to solve these migraines for myself? Because I really do believe that our bodies have a natural capacity to heal and reverse health issues, right? So I wasn't willing to say, oh, I just need to be reliant on a medication or something for the rest of my life. I'm like, this has got to be solvable. So I was willing to try every kind of diet change and supplement, and I've been through and tried them all. And at a certain point in my life, I'm like, these migraines were still happening. And I found myself one day literally on the bathroom floor. I had to cancel all my patients for the day because I couldn't talk to anybody. I felt so horrible. And I, laying there, I'm like, finally asking my body questions like, why is this happening? What am I missing? And one of the things that became really clear to me in that moment is that if I don't start shifting my schedule and my day-to-day routine, then my body's going to create these migraines as a way to force me to take a break from my day-to-day schedule. Force me to stay in bed or on the bathroom floor in pain because I wasn't taking well enough care of myself on the day-to-day. I was pushing myself and taking care of everybody else. So that really shifted things for me. And from there, I was able to make some decisions and actually, instead of hiding and isolating myself with this condition, I was able to ask for help from other experts that helped me figure out what I hadn't figured out yet. And I'll be sharing some of that today. Like, what did I figure out that finally solved those migraines? Because the thing that solved the migraines actually ends up to be helping so many other health issues, including vision, because it's those things that end up helping our nervous system, our body to recover from our day-to-day stress experience. And so however those symptoms are showing up for you, they can resolve by implementing these steps that I'm going to be sharing today. So thank you for asking. That's what, now I live migraine free. Like, sometimes I almost have to like pinch myself, like, is that really true? And I'm like, no, I don't get those migraines anymore. And it's been years. And I'm like, it feels so good, right? It feels so good when you can reverse a health issue and say, see that I'm proof that the body can heal, that we're not stuck with whatever we're dealing with, that there are ways that we can solve health issues many times, most times.
That is such a great example. I mean, migraine, I have a cold right now, as everybody can hear. And, having a cold or migraine will really affect your vision. It will definitely make things blurry, and to the point where you might even be super light sensitive, and eyes are light receivers, right? So we have the title here is Four Surprising Natural Ways to Improve Your Vision. So why don't we just dive right in and go into number one? What is your number one way to improve your vision?
Well, I wanted to first talk about spending time in nature because I know this is something that you're already also talking about. And, like how powerful is that? And the fact is that when we're in our busy lives, right, we're going from one meeting to the next, or we're in an office all day, and sometimes we walk into the office when it's light in the morning, but then we don't get to get any time in nature or light exposure again until we leave when it's dark at night. And so we're missing this time in nature. And sometimes it seems so simple, right? It's like, okay, is that really going to make a difference? But someone like me who loves to dig through and read all the research about stress and stress recovery for humans, I see the research and I can tell you that over and over again, the research connects that as humans, of course, when it comes down to it, we're humans living on planet Earth. And one of the things besides requiring food and water and sleep, we require spending connection time in nature, even a little bit, even a dose of nature every day. And some of the research behind that has to do with, for example, related to vision, right? Being able to, what we can perceive with the sense of vision, including different colors that we only find in nature, symmetry and shapes that we find in nature. Like if you think of a leaf or a tree, right? It's like those, or flower, those are shapes and colors that our nervous system is built to respond to, versus synthetic shapes and colors that we might see on a computer screen, or human made colors and shapes, right? Our brain most responds to nature, to shapes and colors from nature. Also, our other senses, right? What do we hear when we're in nature? Birds chirping, or water on the beach, or right, like just think of what you hear in nature, or what you smell in nature, the smells from nature, in even the what you might feel or touch when you're in nature, like if you touch a tree or touch a rock or touch the sand. And these senses in our body is all part of our nervous system that takes in, and it really has a profound healing impact on our whole body, including our vision, right? And I know I'd love your take on that, because I know this is something you talk about too.
I absolutely do. I often say, don't just with your eyes make assumptions about, let's say, how the bark of the tree, is it rough? If it's is it soft? Is it warm? Is it cold? So touch things. And kids always do that, right? Kids always touch and smell and do all kinds of things. And then we tell them, don't touch that. And I think it's so important. Are there any specific things that you recommend people do in nature to help their vision and their overall well-being?
Definitely. And even if you start with small amount, like even if you're like, okay, maybe I can get outside for 5 minutes and literally just take some deep breaths. And the thing is that sometimes we're in nature, but we're not really present. So I encourage you to just take some breaths and really allow your full focus to come into that moment. What do you see? What do you observe? What do you hear? And experience it, and turn off all the other distractions that can be going on in our life. And also, one thing is I wanted to bring into this about a little bit about quantum physics, because the thing is that it's also the energies that we're experiencing in nature, right? So sometimes people may have heard of grounding. So one thing you can do when you go into nature is literally take your shoes off and have your feet on the ground or on the beach, because now you're getting access to the energy of the earth. You're getting access to what's literally happening is we're energetic beings, right? We have energy flowing through us all the time, and the earth is the most balanced energy for us. So sometimes our energy gets disrupted by different exposures, whether that's EMF, electrical exposures, right? And being indoors and all the synthetic energies we're exposed to. But if you can get your feet on the ground, or lay on the ground, or touch the tree, or touch an animal that's standing on the ground. Now you are getting exposure to the energy field of the earth. Another way to do it is to go to a place where there's water that's moving, like for example, the ocean where the waves are crashing, or a waterfall, because now you're getting exposed to the negative ions from the water movement that also gets into our bodies and helps rebalance us. Because what's happening is we literally, our bodies are mostly made of water, and the eye is mostly made of water, right? So it's like, if we have to, but it's not just regular water. This is the thing, is we think of the states of water as either like a liquid water, like what you drink, or frozen water, like ice. But what science is now showing us is there's actually a state of water that's between liquid water and frozen water called structured water. And structured water is almost like a gel state. And the thing about this structured water is that's how our cells function best, is when the water's in this structured form, almost like a honeycomb shape. This, if you look under a microscope, it allows for the flow of electrons, electrolytes, nutrients, energy through our cells and through the eyes as well. So if we expose ourselves to nature in this way, like the grounding and light exposure and allowing ourselves to be mindful when we're exposed to nature, it helps restructure the water throughout our bodies and our eyes.
Okay, that was fascinating. So you talked about this gel. How do we, and we walk at the beach, let's say, so how do you restructure the water in, like, this is fascinating. And also, obviously, the water in the ocean is not gel, but it's like water, right? It's salt
Yeah.
water. So tell us just a little bit more about that.
Well, it's just the thing that they're showing is, this having structured water in your cells and in your eyes. Anytime I say cells, of course, that's what's happening in our eyes too, is the best way to do that is, first of all, make sure you're getting enough water hydration, right? So make sure you're drinking, of course, filtered water. If, whenever possible, drink filtered water. So you want to make sure you have enough water coming into your body. And then the next step is to make sure you're getting time in nature so that you can activate it. You can get that energetic activation of the water in your system simply by spending some time in nature. There's other ways as well, like sauna therapy, and there's some other things you can do to help to restructure the water in your cells. But to me, one of the things that we all have access to is spending time in nature and getting a little bit of sunlight. So you want to be like, best is, and this will lead us into number 2 here, which is I want to encourage you all to be resetting your circadian rhythm. So one of the things you can also kind of piggyback on this is, for resetting your circadian rhythm, you want it in the morning when you wake up, you want to get some sunlight on your eyes, on your skin, so that your brain is perceiving light exposure in the morning. Our circadian rhythm is what we might think of as our sleep-wake cycle, right? It's how our human body and brain and nervous system knows that we're going from daytime to nighttime. Like, I think, again, sometimes we treat ourselves as if we're living in a machine, but we're not living in a machine. We're living in a human body, and it's very responsive to Earth. We live on Earth, where we do have day and night, and our nervous system needs exposure to signals that tell us that it's day or night. There's a lot of research that shows, and say when someone's working the night shift and they're getting light exposure at night, it really disrupts the whole system and predisposes people to a lot of different health issues. Whereas, or if someone is working inside all day, again, they're not getting the light exposure during the day. It really disrupts their system. Or someone who has insomnia, for example, right? We know that their sleep-wake cycle is off, and it really increases their risk of health issues. So what we want to do, we want to learn from that and say, how can we really put because we get to choose, as the one living in this human body, we get to choose what we're going to do with our human body. And we can say, hey, when I wake up in the morning, I'm going to intentionally get myself outside, put my feet on the ground and get the grounding, so I get the energetic signaling to my cells, but I'm also getting the light exposure so that my nervous system knows it's daytime, and it starts to signal different hormones in our body, including cortisol. Cortisol is our main stress hormone, yes, and we're going to talk more about cortisol as a stress hormone. But cortisol is also the hormone that sets our circadian rhythm. So we need that light exposure so that our brain knows, hey, it's not nighttime anymore, it's daytime. We need some cortisol to increase, not too high, but just enough cortisol to give us energy, focus, support our mood, our motivation. So we start to get the right hormone signaling as well as immune system, digestion, nervous system. It all requires that signaling. And so then it literally is almost like the on switch to our bodies. If you almost think about it like that, we have to like get some light exposure in the morning to turn the switch on to say, hey, I'm ready for daytime. And then you can, again, at night, the other way of resetting your circadian rhythm is to also give your brain, your nervous system signals of darkness at night, right? And I always joke because even though when you're sleeping, your eyes are closed, but still the brain perceives that you're in a dark room or not, right? So you want to, even I say, go into your bedroom during the day and notice, are there lights there? Is there lights on different devices? Is there a light on your clock or charger or air filter? Like, cover the lights in your room so that you have darkness at night. You want, even when your eyes are shut, you want your brain to perceive the darkness, because then the cortisol goes down and the melatonin goes up. And melatonin is our sleep hormone. It does all kinds of repair and restoration while we sleep. I always joke, like, because I used to be the person who was like, I got so much to get done, I don't have time to sleep, right? We kind of grew up in this culture of who has time to sleep? And literally, I decided to write a book about this. One of my books is called Natural Insomnia Solution. And I decided, in order to feel fully in alignment with writing this book, I had to implement it myself. So I was like, I have to practice getting into bed, practice getting the lights turned down, and getting really good sleep, and even tracking my sleep and really understanding what does it take to get good sleep, because we know from the research that when we do get good sleep, it's actually doing what's called the glymphatic. It's the glymphatic system. It's our brain has almost like a self-cleaning oven. And we need that darkness and melatonin to signal the self-cleaning oven to clean out our nervous system while we're sleeping. So I always say now, so much good stuff happens while you're sleeping that then we have a different value for sleep, right? We can't risk not sleeping. We really need that sleep time to restore our nervous system and heal our whole body. So it's like that also is part of the circadian rhythm, is the darkness signal. So I would even say giving yourself the opportunity to watch the sunset, right? Like starting with that. Because you also then have a conscious awareness, oh, this is the end of the day. I'm watching the sun go down. I'm watching the colors, the shapes, the experience of it turning to darkness, seeing the stars. This helps our whole nervous system to know, oh, this is now getting close to bedtime. And you get to really reset your circadian rhythm by doing that.
Okay, well, what if you live in Seattle?
I know, right? I used to live in Seattle,
That's
where it
what I'm
is.
saying.
And sometimes it's gray for many days. So there are ways that you can, then purchase, for example, light, like, or if it's winter time and you're like, or you live in a part of the world where it's dark for a lot of hours, certain times of the year. So you can purchase light devices so that when you wake up in the morning, if it's really gray and dark out, you can still give yourself this natural light exposure in the morning. And then, too, in the evening, then emphasize, okay, this is the darkness that signals going to sleep. And so there are ways to still support that transition and from light to darkness, even if you live in a place that's dark more of the time.
So a couple of questions on asking what you talked about. So when you go out, you do the circadian reset, or in nature, that kind of goes into both. Do you recommend being barefoot? Like, obviously, summertime, I'm not talking about winter, but is that a better way to ground? And my second question was, like, say I love to do a beach walk once a week for like 6 miles here in Los Angeles. But sometimes I I'm just walking, and other times I'm talking to my mom or I'm listening to a podcast. And there's definitely that aspect of what you said, that you're not as present with the environment. But even if you walk with a friend, even if you talk to a friend and you're engaged in conversation, right? So what is your take on that, compared to just, I mean, here's also my question to you. How long can you really be present on the beach walk where you don't get distracted by thoughts? Because it's not like the environment changes every 5 minutes when you go around a bend. So, okay, go ahead.
Yes, 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 yes. Well, one thing is if you're worried about be having your feet on the ground and like worried, like I'm worried, like, oh, I don't want to step on a bee or something sharp, or so you might. What I've done now is you can get grounding shoes. So they're usually made of natural substances, like say leather. So then you can wear these grounding shoes when you go outside. And I'm loving that because now I can use my grounding shoes when I walk around in the yard, when I take my dog out, or when I go down to the beach, I can use the grounding shoes. So that's another way you can still get that energy from the earth through, even if you have shoes on. You just get the grounding shoes. And then in terms of being on the beach, like what I did today is, and what I try to do is literally leave my phone and not bring the phone with me. Because well, yes, sometimes I like to be able to take pictures and videos, so then I like to have my phone, but if I can, I try to leave the phone so that I don't have that excuse to go grab my phone or listen to something. And I try to just like model for other people in my life, say, hey, I'm not going to be available for 15 minutes, even if it's 15 minutes, right? Like, we're probably not going to miss something in 15 minutes if I'm like, let me just go down and like take a walk on the beach, or just be in the moment and lose sense of time a little bit. Like, I think that's good for us to just say, to give ourselves that possibility of just letting go of all of the deadlines and appointments and say, let me just set that aside and really, yeah, take in, what are the plants that I'm seeing? What are the rocks? What is the water doing? Like, really allow yourself to focus on that. And I've taken this a lot from some of my best learning, besides what I learned growing up in the Pacific Northwest, is spending time in the Amazon jungle. And I've been to the Amazon jungle twice now. And when I go and spend time in the Amazon, there is no cell service, or let alone running water or electricity. And so you're in it's like if someone maybe goes camping, and you have that experience too, where you're just in nature and you don't have some of these conveniences of our daily society, which of course sometimes we need those to help us, connect with each other, like here on the computer. So I'm grateful for them, but sometimes it's nice to just take a break, and you start to realize, like, wow, nature really has this healing capacity. I say that's my preferred hospital room, is my room in the Amazon jungle, because so much healing happens when you're surrounded with this, and you can set aside. Literally, my only clock was the sun and the moon. Becomes the clock, and hearing the different insects in the jungle. They actually change. There's different insects that are awake at night than the insects that are awake during the day. And so you hear different sounds. The sounds, by the way, of nature, so healing. And so, yeah, so to me, I just encourage everybody, even if you start with small increments, then maybe you can build up to 2 weeks in the Amazon jungle and really experience what that's like, to have that opportunity to choose, that for yourself, and set aside the race of our daily living.
I absolutely love this. It's so interesting because to me, the phone is both a blessing and a curse, because I mean, I remember one time I went to the beach and I forgot my phone. I was like, should I turn around? I'm like, no. And it was the most incredible, like I've never seen, I go literally for 4 years every weekend. I've never seen waves like this. It was really stormy and the seagulls were all hunched in and the little sandpipers. I'm like, and then I thought of this thing where they have these black and white things like describing a picture. I was like, I need to do a post. I never ended up doing it. Like describing exactly what I saw. But I was like, I was kind of sad. And then I was like, in a way, it was a relief. But to me, it's the picture taking is one thing, which I still think is a little bit more connecting you with what you see versus the constant distraction. And I'm absolutely guilty. I will try that and go without the phone. The other day, I forgot it to an appointment, and I was like, I don't know what time. I have to ask people what time it is. Like, I'm like, I can't call anybody to like let them know I'm running late. It's okay. It's like back in the days. Okay, but we have more to cover. So we have point three. What is your third way of surprising natural ways to improve your vision?
Well, so this is it was actually surprising to me because I talk about and been writing about these things for so many years, and then one day I realized it fits in with the acronym CARE. So the third way is what I talk about as practicing your self-care. And you're going to see that some of what we already have been talking about fits in with this. But I want to now put it into the structure of self-care. Now, when we usually think of self-care, like some of us have, still kind of put that into the category of something that's a luxury, or okay, that'd be nice if I could do some self-care. And I really like to redefine it as essential. Self-care, as I learned laying on the bathroom floor with a migraine, self-care is essential. And instead of dismissing it or saving it for the weekend, we need to be doing it every single day. And so the way that I think about self-care is with this acronym. So C is for clean eating, and we can go back through each of them. C is for clean eating, A is for adequate sleep, R is for recovery activities, and E is for exercise or movement, right? So if we go back and we think about, I invite you as we talk this through to do kind of a check-in for yourself, because we're all at a different place with these aspects of self-care. Maybe you've been working on clean eating already and you're like, I think I've got that dialed in. Great. Then evaluate the others and see I really believe that living life as a human is a constant practice of fine-tuning our self-care, because we don't learn this in elementary school. We don't learn this in college. We're going to have to learn it once we realize, wow, this is important. I can't procrastinate myself. I can't put everyone else's needs in front of mine, because ultimately if we don't take care of ourselves, we can't help others, right? So I had to learn that the hard way as a practitioner. I had to figure out how to take care of myself in order to help others. And so starting with the clean eating, my definition of clean eating is eating in a way that supports our natural physiology, right? So yes, we can be avoiding pesticides and choosing nutrient-dense foods that have antioxidants in them and protein, and we can go into more details about that, and avoiding the foods that are inflammatory, right? Avoiding sugar, avoiding artificial sweeteners, avoiding the things that aren't supporting our bodies. So that to me is a simple way to, like, if you're going to choose what to eat, simply ask yourself, is this supportive of my body and what I'm trying to achieve with my health? If it's not, then I'm going to set it aside and choose something different. So it's a matter of really prioritizing yourself and saying, I'm going to just only feed myself in a way that supports my body. And this is to some degree unique to each person. I don't like to prescribe really definite specifics to everyone, because I do believe that it has to be unique to you. Certain foods are more inflammatory to certain people and not to others. Certain patterns and frequency of eating is different for each of us. Even fasting, we need to individualize. As much as, yes, some degree of an overnight fast has been shown to be healing, we also have to take into account our stress exposure. If we're under a lot of stress, we shouldn't be fasting as long. When I go to the Amazon, I can fast for longer because I've turned off a lot of the other stress of my daily activities. But when I'm in my day-to-day life of seeing patients and doing conversations like this, I need to be having smaller meals more often through the day and fasting for a shorter amount of time. So you have to be able to know your body, know your activities, and then adjust your fasting schedule based on that. And your eating schedule based on that. So that's a little bit about clean eating. Adequate sleep, we spoke about with circadian rhythm, how important sleep is, and really taking that time to even just start by asking yourself, how many hours of sleep did you get last night? This is normal conversation for me, so I'm used to always thinking about that and talking to patients about that. But if it's not something that you usually do, even just starting with that, hey, when did you go to bed? When do you think you fell asleep? And when did you wake up? And how many hours was that? Are you getting to that at least 7.5 to 9 hours of sleep. You can also, of course, get a device, like a sleep tracking device, whether it's an Oura Ring or iWatch, that helps you track it for a little while and see, hey, are you getting into deep sleep? So you can go to that extent, but sometimes I find that it's simply enough to just take notice of, hey, can I get myself in bed a little earlier so that I can make sure that I'm getting adequate sleep?
I find it incredibly helpful. I have one of these Aura rings, and sometimes, I think it makes sense. Your resilience is really low because I was flying on a red eye, but sometimes it's interesting to me because I thought, oh God, I slept 9 hours because I spent 9 hours in bed. And then I look at the ring and it says only 6 hours. So sometimes it actually helps me to understand. And also eating too late, for instance, I noticed that my heart rate variability is low, my temperature is higher. So I think it can be definitely helpful. So I'm really curious about the recovery and then the movement or exercise. Like what do you recommend for those? Because we haven't covered that yet.
I love it. And I love that you mentioned heart rate variability, because heart rate variability is one of the ways that we can assess for how our body is recovering from stress. This is the thing, is we have a built-in stress response system. It's like a radar system in our nervous system that's going to be constantly picking up on our different senses that we talked about in our environment. And, did you get enough sleep? Did you get enough food to eat? It's picking up on all of this. And if it perceives a stress, it's going to signal a stress response, which is what we think of as like fight or flight response, like heart racing, even sweating, mind racing, heart racing. And sometimes we get stuck in that stress response because we're not getting enough of the recovery activities. And so the recovery activities help us to signal the anti-stress. I call it the anti-stress system, or the parasympathetic nervous system, which is the opposite of that fight or flight. We actually have a built-in stress recovery system. And that the thing is, we don't usually think about, how can I intentionally signal to my anti-stress system, right? We get plenty of opportunities to signal our stress system. We don't even have to try for that. Even just if you think about a stress, it signals the stress system. So we need to practice signaling to our anti-stress system. What heart rate variability measures is our ability to switch from stress system to anti-stress. Stress, an appropriate stress response, and the appropriate recovery response. So as you mentioned, when you have improved heart rate variability, it's showing you that you're having improved ability to recover from stress. And there's a lot of activities, so much research on this. And I talk about this in the Master Your Stress, Reset Your Health book. All the different activities, a whole menu of activities that can help you recover from stress. Everything from spending time in nature that you already learned about with me here today. Also, sometimes it's just having quiet by yourself. So it can be as simple as just having sometimes I know as a mom, you're like dream of having 15 minutes just by yourself. You almost just want to go in the shower for 15 minutes just to feel like you're by yourself for 15 minutes, Also, it can mean connecting with community. That's the other side of it. It can be calling a mom, calling a friend, talking with other humans. That's very much of a stress recovery activity, let alone things like music, whether it's music you enjoy that you can dance to, or calming music. There's a lot of different, also sound therapy and music therapy that's very healing to our nervous system. Also, any type of mindfulness, meditation, along those lines, even into yoga type movements. Those are all have been found to be what I consider recovery activities, because they promote this anti-stress system. There's also some substances that help us with our anti-stress recovery, including what are called entheogens, which are often plant-based substances that are psychedelic in nature, that are known to help reset our nervous system, promote neuroplasticity, and help us recover from stress. So there's a lot to choose from when it comes to recovery activities.
That sounds really fascinating. We definitely have to talk about psychedelics another time and dive more into that. So talk a little bit about movement. I mean, to me, movement is a big piece, and exercise is just a tiny thing. And just so you know, like, I don't like to call vision improvement exercises, because most people with exercise think more of muscle contraction and just like doing a specific, like rolling your eyes or whatever in that case. Whereas I talk a lot about movement, which is really natural. And people with good vision always have that sensation of movement, versus people that have glasses or have poor vision, they don't feel the movement in the same way. But I'm curious, what are you recommending? Because when we talk about stress reduction or everything we talked about, this will 100% impact your eyesight and your vision. And also when you talked about the parasympathetic nervous system, right? Vision is like this big thing, like really quickly to interject here. It's like binocular vision, it's peripheral vision, it's night vision, it's color vision, versus eyesight is basically visual acuity, which is also important, right? How sharp we can see things. But a lot of times, like when we say the word exercise, I feel people get so drawn into this idea of just exercising your muscles, when in most cases the muscles are way too tense. So tell us a little bit about your approach to movement or exercise in the self-care.
Absolutely. And as you might already anticipate, I'm going to say it needs to be individualized to you. You know, like so much of the time we'll hear, oh, someone said I should do this, this, this. And yet, if it doesn't match for your body, and again, this is why I like to use self care as a foundation. The more you can be learning to feed yourself in a way that works for you, getting good sleep, you're doing these recovery activities, and then you have to start with exercise. You know, if you're starting from scratch, we need to start small, right? You might be starting with 5 minutes of simple core strengthening or light Pilates, for example. Start with just gentle, what feels good to your body, and then you can listen to your body and gradually increase the length of time or intensity or frequency of your exercise. But believe me, I'm the person who way overdid it. Like I was like, oh, I'm going to go to the gym and I'm going to do kettlebells and I'm going to do, be really increasing my strength, which of course strength is a good thing. But some of us, at some point, the body's going to hit a stress point. Exercise is a stress anyway. That's how it builds muscles, because it's stressing our joints and our muscles to stimulate muscle growth. And so it's a matter of what we call hormesis. Hormesis is kind of this Goldilocks principle where, remember Goldilocks, right? It's like, how do you get just the right amount for your body at this point in time, right? Goldilocks is like, this porridge is too hot, this porridge is too cold, I want the porridge just right. And that's the really, like, sometimes the challenge, but also the beauty of being human and listening to your body to find your Goldilocks amount of exercise, like, so it's better to start small, because then you don't overdo it. And then you can, if you check in with your body each day and you see, how did I feel after that exercise? Am I tired? Am I in pain? Okay, I overdid it. I need to do less. Let me modify it to match my body's ability to respond in a positive way and not a negative way, and ending up in injury, or because then I think sometimes then people give up. They're like, oh, I can't do that, and so they give up. And we think, oh, I'm supposed to just start off running 5 miles. No, I wouldn't start with running 5 miles, right? And you want to choose something you enjoy also. Like, don't force yourself to do some sort of exercise that somebody else said is a good thing if it doesn't, it's not even something you enjoy.
That is so interesting, because I say the same thing when it comes to the vision practices, right? I always get this question, how many times, how long, how often? I said, it depends, right? You want to, and I think what you said, the connecting with the just right amount is so powerful, but it takes some education of ourselves to kind of connect with that. I call that insight, right? The insights, how much, like if I do too much, maybe my eyes feel strained or they feel tired, and just doing the right amount. I think it's with other, not vision, but in other terms of exercise, it's challenging. I actually pulled my right shoulder like 2 months ago because I started taking fitness class, and that's exactly like, I felt really good, but then you end up overdoing it because my body wasn't used to an hour of a HIIT class, right? So I think it's very important to listen to ourselves. And with vision, again, it's all about tuning in. I know we want these prescriptive things, do something 2 times a day for 5 minutes. And I think that can be helpful. I don't know what your take on this is, but at the end of the day, we need to tune into what we really need, because otherwise it's too much, or you do too little, and then you don't see results, and then you blame the method or you take whatever for not seeing results. So, right? Do you
Yes,
agree?
that's what we see in the science. It's about hormesis, finding that perfect amount for you as an individual, and ultimately we are unique based on our genetics, based on our past stress, and our current stress. And this leads us to number 4, which is I really encourage each and of you to understand your individual, what I call your stress type, because the stress type is something that I defined as the combination of, again, your genetics, right? Because our genetics influence, of course, our health to some degree, as well as our response to stress. But it's not 100%. We know now that our genetics are not defining 100% of our experience here. Sometimes the genetics are only even influencing 10%. The other 90% of what we experience in our health has to do with our past stress, even back to childhood, and our current stress recovery. And all of this goes into determining your stress type at this point in your life. And so by knowing your stress type, then you can make these decisions with more information. You can say, okay, based on my stress type, this is how I'm going to choose my eating pattern or my fasting window, or this is how I'm going to choose my exercise or my recovery. But it's based on understanding my stress type. And the stress type is based on your cortisol levels and your adrenaline levels. Cortisol and adrenaline are our main 2 stress hormones, right? And we usually assume that we have high cortisol, right? Most people, if we ask, they're probably like, I probably have high cortisol because I think I'm stressed. And actuality, because I did the research in my practice, I studied 127 adults and measured their cortisol throughout the day and measured their adrenaline, and I found that not everybody has high cortisol. It's that maybe a third of people have high cortisol, a third of people have low cortisol, and a third of people may have a combination of high or low cortisol. And so we need to know, because if your cortisol is too high, you're going to have different self-care activities than if your cortisol is too low. And so it really makes a difference to know. Now, you can measure these things. You can work with a practitioner. I do this in my practice. We measure patients' cortisol and adrenaline levels so they know exactly what their levels are and exactly how then to implement their self-care and their supplements. But I created a quiz that's available online, and you can share the link if you'd like, for your listeners to do their stress type quiz. And within a couple minutes, you go through and you answer some questions that I've found, that I developed over the years of doing this research, and found these questions help you to identify likely your stress type. And from there, then you have the information to really modify and implement your self-care in a way that matches for your stress type.
I love it. I did post it on YouTube and here and on the Zoom. So this was really, how can people work with you? How else can they find you? Tell us a little bit about that.
For sure. Well, the book, the Master Stress Reset Your Health book, is a great place to start. You can find that on Amazon. It's also Audible and any other place that you like to find books. And you can find me at drdoni.com, doctordoni.com is my website. On YouTube, I'm Dr. Doni Wilson, so DRDONIWILSON. And I welcome you to join me there on my podcast, which is called How Humans Heal.
Thank you so much. I just see nice messages on YouTube. There is no particular questions. We have one question I want to ask right now before we hop off. That is from my membership community here. Like, what kind of grounding shoes? Like, is there a specific, because I personally wear barefoot shoes, so they have very thin soles. But what particular shoes do you recommend for the grounding?
I have the shoes from Earthing Harmony, and I'm really liking them. There are others that you can find, if you search online, you'll find more, but I do like the Earthing Harmony shoes. They've been great.
Okay, great. I'm going to put that in the YouTube chat. Well, thank you so much. We will end the YouTube live now and have a little bit extra time in our membership.